Good. Well, I'm glad to be here tonight sharing a few minutes of what I know about ADD and ADHD. My staff says that I suffer from this. I disagree with them wholeheartedly. Oh, look, there's a squirrel. And you know how that is. That's kind of, you have so many things to keep on your mind. ADD, attention deficit disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are somewhat the same thing. So we're going to discuss what that is, but here's a funny picture of me. Actually, I do want to get a better picture here. Anyway, this is who I am. I've been practicing now for 22 years, and I have a wellness practice, as I'm sure most of you do as well. It's been an amazing ride. ADD is, I think, something that a lot of us carry on to some extent or another. Either we're full-fledged medicated for it, or we just have a little bit of difficulty really focusing on what we're discussing. So ADD, again, attention deficit disorder, and when you put the hyperactivity with it, where they can't sit down and they're constantly fidgeting, now you're bringing the HD into it. So inattention, hyperactive, and impulsive. A lot of these kids are just extremely bright, and we'll discuss that in a minute, but they've been either super fed with sugars, or they have fungus, or they have some other issue that's causing them to have these symptoms. I don't believe in ADD or ADHD as an infection, or not as a named disease, but as basically symptoms. So the causes: environmental toxins, lack of nutrition, lack of vitamins and minerals, and endocrine burnout. Those are the main things that I see as the issues. Environmental toxins here, I would suggest, are the layers of infection. That's what we're talking about here. One of the things I use in my office to determine where people have trouble in their brains is Dr. Ammon's book, Magnificent Mind at Any Age. He has a wonderful 60-question questionnaire here where the patient will go down, and for every 10 questions, it represents a different part of the body, or a different part of the brain. And depending on how they answer these questions, they're rated from 0 to 5. 5 would be all the time I have this symptom, to 1 hardly ever. The patient's able to go through and answer this questionnaire, and it'll tell us exactly what part of the brain is having troubles, so that we can determine. And according to Dr. Ammon, he's also suggested various nutrients that would go with that frontal brain, or the hind brain, or the midbrain. There are 6 main areas that he discusses here. So I would recommend this book. There's various questionnaires in it, but I use that one all the time, that questionnaire all the time, and then I'm able to send the people to the health food store to get a particular nutrient. It might be SAMe, or one of those things that I don't carry in my office. You might, but that's a very good book that helps there as well. I find generally, though, with ADD, most of the people are suffering from fungal overgrowth, and this is a great picture of yeast overgrowth in the GI tract. This fungus produces mycotoxin, and I'm sure you already know all this, but this is what I noticed mainly. So fungus creates mycotoxin, and those mycotoxins affect your brain significantly, as though you were inebriated, as though you were drunk. So what we do with our ADD kids is we sit them down before school. 7:30 was, they had to be at the school by 8. We feed them Cocoa Pebbles or some other sugar food that also has white refined flour in it, and it feeds this fungus. When it feeds it, it actually creates more mycotoxin. Those mycotoxins then go up and affect the brain and the neurotransmitters of the brain, and make it very difficult for focusing. So I really focus a lot, not only on fungal issues, but on any kind of layers of infection that can also create leaky gut syndrome. Again, leaky gut syndrome, as discussed in our last month's seminar, is, I believe, the beginnings of all kinds of diseases. So to be able to get in and remove those layers of infection is vital. But I think that's just a great view. I'll see this as well. It looks like cauliflower behind the eardrum as well, because I can go right up the eustachian tube and affect the eardrum. That's another area where you can see it. You see the fungal overgrowth on the back of the tongue as a thickened coating on the back of the tongue. I find that with the allergies to sugar as well and to other foods, it leads us to the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde syndrome. I can, and you've seen the kids in your offices as well, that when they are hunting for sugar or they have their glycemic index is very low, they're almost like a ravenous dog looking for something to eat. Once they have the sugar, they kind of calm down, and then they'll go back into the cycle again, back and forth. And it's that Mr. Hyde issue that the teachers want to medicate. So we feed them full of the sugar, send them to school, and by 8 or 9:30 or so, they're starting to crave sugar again. They've worked through the sugar. Insulin has been released. It's stored the sugar as fat. It's created inflammation, and now you've also fed the fungus. More mycotoxins are released, and basically inebriation or back and forth between this idea of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. As well, the endocrine and adrenal burnout. Most of us that are ADD have adrenals because we're pushing all the time. Our adrenals become fatigued and will burn out, leading then to subsequent thyroid dysfunction, thyroid burnout, and all the way through all of our endocrine system. This is a multifaceted issue, looking at the gut, the layers of infection in the gut, supporting the adrenal glands, hypothalamus, and what a great opportunity we have to use hypothala. I don't know many other companies that carry anything for the hypothalamus gland. And I used to be so thinking that it was all from the pituitary, but literally the hypothalamus is what controls the pituitary, or the gatekeeper. So it's a great opportunity to have that hypothalamus or hypothalin in our arsenal, along with thyroidin for the thyroid, the adrenex for the adrenal glands, pancreas for the pancreas. It's just what a great opportunity. So for treatment, when I'm getting into the layers of infection, I'm looking first off at the fungex. But we'll look here in a minute at the other types of supplements that we use for the different infections. We then use also serologic. Serologic helps to support the brain function, neurologic function. It helps to bring more focus. And you can see here midbrain. Let's see, that's hindbrain, midbrain, and forebrain. So this, along with specific nutrients that you can find in Dr. Amen's book, will be very, very specific in determining where we need to support in the brain. Next is the Cetaquil. Cetaquil can be used in the evening to relieve stress and help the patient get to sleep, but it can also be used during the day to help bring that sedation. While the patient is getting under control, getting rid of the infections, getting rid of the fungus and the addiction to sugar, they can use a Cetaquil instead of going on Ritalin or any of the other zombification supplements, or that's a Gilesism, by the way. But it turns them into zombies. It just shuts them down. All these brilliant kids, when we use Ritalin and the other calmers, it just turns them, what I've found is turns them into tired kids, zombies. It just shuts them down. Next is the Nerval, again supporting nerve tissue, supports the myelin sheath and neurotransmission. Adrenex, because oftentimes the ADD kids actually are adrenal deficient. You'd think that they would be hyperadrenal, but they're adrenal deficient. So balancing the adrenal gland with the Adrenex. And then Fulvicaba is tremendous. If you attended the seminar last month, we learned about the importance of Fulvicaba. Fulvic acid is the super mineral, and it's the only one of the main things that we know of that helps things go across the blood-brain barrier. And then the kava comes from an island, it's called the Juju Island, I believe Brent told me, is just off of the coast of where Dr. Dayun grew up. And that's a brown algae that's a superfood that goes along with it as well. So, and it's a great, both these are super antioxidants and just an amazing support. So when you mix that into the mix as well, you're tremendous. The one that I didn't put on here is IntegraCell. I use a lot of IntegraCell. That's 8,000 milligrams of type A antioxidant. There's two types, type A and type B. Type A antioxidant will knock out 1 million free radicals per molecule, per milligram. So there's 8,000 type A milligrams in IntegraCell. So 8,000 times a million is 80 billion free radicals per scoop. That's just amazing, and I get my patients on that first out of the gate. They're on IntegraCell. And now I'm going to start to use the fulvic acid as well. I just didn't have any idea of the importance of it. Again, the layers of infection. Not only are you looking just at the fungex, but the bacteria for Bacto-X, Meta-X drops are heavy metals. Microcyte is for small parasites, and Paramac is for large. With the microcyte, we usually treat for 40 days on, continuously. With Paramac, we treat for 10 days on and 5 days off for a 15-day cycle. And we usually try for 4 cycles of that. So that helps us get rid of any larval state. The fungex, as already discussed, helps the body rid fungus by making it so interrupting its life cycle, so that it doesn't. It has an ability to replicate. So that's tremendous. So we can. It's not so fighting, if you will, as diflucan. Diflucan is a chemical that kills whatever it can touch, but the pseudopods that are down into the tissue, those will regrow as soon as the threat of the diflucan is gone. So fungex helps it to render the fungus with an inability to propagate. It can't replicate itself. And lastly, the Viro-X for removing viruses. So getting rid of those layers of infection out of the gut, out of the system, also helps to diminish the overall inflammatory load of the system. So support for brain and nervous tissue, the serologic, the Nerval, fish oil. I just talked to Brent, and Brent was going to talk to Dr. Dayun about getting us a good fish oil. And whatever Dayun or Dr. Kim goes after, he makes the best, period. He doesn't just throw it into the line to have a me too. It is the best for all the reasons we've discussed before. At the end of this, I will discuss how the supplements are made very quickly, so you can, if those of you that don't know. The Cetaquil, again, that's supporting calming, and then the Tox-X helps to pull the toxins and remove the overall waste products. So I'm at the end of the overall presentation, but let me just take just a minute. When Dr. Kim created the line, he found that every single organ has a particular spin of the DNA. From the Genome Project, where they took millions of different people and genes and found that each of our organs has just slightly different DNA, but that each organ had a little bit different spin of the DNA. So as he created this line, he found that each of the supplements he wanted to use herbs that were balanced towards the spin. So he would use one herb at a time, and if that herb, when it was put into the matrix, caused the spin of the DNA to speed up, he didn't use it. If it caused it to slow down, he didn't use it. He only used the herbs that kept the spin the exact same frequency. And then when you mix that with the FormCode is created bioidentical human DNA. We're not using glandulars from animal product. We're using bioidentical human DNA that was created in the lab. So they were able to take through chelation therapy, which means movement of proteins or amino acids. They could sequence those amino acids right back in order to create long-chain DNAs. And that's what whenever you see FormCode, if it says FormCode or adrenal FormCode, that means genetically created DNA in the lab in mass quantity, mixed with the herb that is also balanced for the frequency of the DNA. So this line is designed to support the organ by creating more healthy and more appropriately functioning DNA of that particular organ, and to give it nutrients and vitamins and minerals. The vitamins and minerals likewise were designed to with the balance as well. They weren't just thrown into the formula. They were also balanced to the spin. So sometimes with these supplements, you're not going to see as big of a bang out of the chute. With other companies, let's say you give them an adrenal support, bam, they're excited, they're moving, they have tons of energy. With Inno-Vita, it's going to be a slow rise, but it's going to be one of creation of appropriate functioning DNA. That's what makes you stand out as a practitioner from all the rest of the practitioners, is that the supplements that you carry, the Inno-Vita products, are designed to repair, not just to stimulate or sedate. They're to bring balance, and that's what makes your, this is your strategic advantage. It's Inno-Vita's strategic advantage as well, but now it's ours. Yeah, and I think that's the whole key, is to realize that those amino acids are coming from plant-based. So these aren't, when I say created in the lab, the amino acids, yes, are chelated or put in specific points along the line of the rung of the DNA. So you can actually take chelation and put adenine, guanine, cytosine, and tyrosine. Those are the 4 amino acids that are used per rung. But it's the positioning of those 4 that creates the genetic code. But those adenine, guanine, cytosine, and tyrosine are from plants, not chemical, not glandular. That's a tremendous point. And one thing I like about using B-Comp is that you're using the complement. It's not just one B vitamin or one type. And I've always been concerned about using B12 or B6 in its isolate form. I'd rather use a complex. So the B-Comp would be the one you would be thinking of for your overall Bs. The oils, that's what I want to see Dr. Kim come up with in the next year, would be a good oil. We don't have to be concerned about the fish oils being contaminated. Really looking at as far as getting the oils around. Yeah, so I would do B-Comp, Serologic, and our future omega oil. And until we get that done, just find the best source that you can of the oil. And it's not that Inno-Vita is a vegetarian company. We're not vegetarians. That's not the idea. It's how the animals are treated. It's the processing. It's the animal husbandry that lies the problem. So now we've got mercury in the waters where we can't hardly eat our fish. We've got the oils that or the growth hormones and so forth that we feed our cows and everything else to get them to fatten up so we can take them to market. And that's why Inno-Vita is against animal glandules or animal parts. So I'm assuming fish oil will never be part of an omega-3, omega-6 fatty acid supplement. It will be plant-based. Always, I would answer this question with, you got to use kinesiology. You have to be able to do some type of query of the body to determine what to give, how much to give, and when to give. If we could get over our fear of the kinesiology or muscle testing, which I think we all somewhat have a little bit of a fear of, how are we going to be perceived by the patient? Is it really valid? But I don't know any other way to query other than an electrodermal screening test. Even all of our blood work and lab work won't tell us what supplement to use and when. So you're going to have to go back and ask, but yes, I would actually use, let me just see if I can pull that back. So treatment, so Fungex, the Serologic, the Cetiquil, the Nerval, I would use those 3 right there always. As far as those are my first ones I'm thinking of. The Fulvicaba, I think those 4 would be the best. Then thinking of, if adrenals do show, we would want to bring the adrenal gland in or any of the other supplements for the endocrine system. And then looking at the Fungex, I would suggest 90% of the time when the ADD is present, fungus is the culprit as far as the layer of infection. So, look at your other layers of infection, but Fungex for sure. So again, the answer is you got to check kinesiologically.